Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us today. My name is Allie Lepp. I am a Canals Fellow with NOAA's Arctic Research Program, and I'm a co-lead for the Field Operations Community of Practice with IARPC. Today, I'm joining this call from the ancestral homelands of the Anacostan and the Piscataway peoples here in Silver Spring, Maryland. And on behalf of my co-leads of field operations, Katie Smith, David Allen, and Renee Crane, we're really excited to share this time with the IARPC collaborations community and with our partners at Arctic Watch. So to get us started, I'm going to hand it over to John Orr with the IARPC Secretariat.
Thank you, Ellie. I'm John Orr with the IARPC Secretariat. I work as the Indigenous Engagement and Communications Specialist. I'm calling in from Fairbanks on Lower Tanana Dene lands. So I'm going to start with the land and sea acknowledgement. Since time immemorial, Indigenous people have been mindfully occupying and carefully observing the liminal provinces where shore meets salt water and sea ice, bearing children generation upon generation, building knowledge upon knowledge in a cycle that, like the tides, will never end as long as our world remains composed of sand and sea. The relationship that Indigenous people have cultivated with the bodies of water that we now call the Bering, Chukchi, and Beaufort Seas, but were once and still are referred to in our Indigenous languages as the Great Bounty, is a relationship that can never be broken because it's as resilient as life itself. I hope that we can all come to recognize the beauty in that relationship and do all that's in our power as a united mass of humanity to remember it, to acknowledge it, and most importantly, to protect it. So I'm going to go through a bit of housekeeping here. So if you want to go to the next, thank you. Before we get started, I'm going to go over these items. So as Ali said, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. First, this webinar is very much come as you are. Joining virtual meetings these days is hard. We're thankful that you made the time and space to come together with us today, and want to emphasize that that's not a small thing. Just please keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking so we don't get too much background noise. We'd love for you to turn on your cameras, especially during the Q&A period of this webinar. But if that's not possible, we totally understand. As a reminder, you've all been automatically muted when you came in, but you can click the button on the lower left of your Zoom screen to unmute yourself at any time. And if you're joining audio by phone, which we thank you for that if you are, you can unmute and mute yourself with *6. Next. You can use the chat at any time to ask questions or make comments. To chat, you select the chat icon at the bottom of the screen. Select the option to chat to everyone in order to ask a question or make a comment. Alternatively, during the Q&A period, you can use the raise hand button by clicking reactions on the toolbar and then selecting raise hand. That'll help us see that you have a question, and we will then invite you to unmute so you can ask your question. We'll do our best to alternate between chat and oral questions if that's an issue. And if you're on the phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. I'm going to drop a couple of links in the chat here for us, which go over our code of conduct. And actually looks like Katie Smith did that for me. Thank you. So IARPC Collaborations is a community space. Our code of conduct aims to support a community where all people feel open and safe to participate, introduce new ideas, and inspire others. If you haven't already read our code of conduct, the link is in the chat there. We expect everyone to adhere to the principles for conducting research in the Arctic, which we now call the SHARE principles. We appreciate and accommodate our similarities and differences, be inclusive, commit to self-improvement, give professional feedback, recognize the colonial history of science and research, and respect intellectual property and Indigenous data sovereignty and Indigenous knowledge itself. Derogatory language, personal attacks, unacceptable or unlawful use of intellectual property, unwelcome sexual attention, or violence or threats of violence will not be tolerated in this space. We should all know that we're adults here. If you need to report a code of conduct violation, there are instructions at the link I placed in the chat. And if you're joining by phone, the link is available in the footer of our website at Code of Conduct. That concludes the housekeeping. So now I'm going to hand it over to Captain Steve White and Byron Hayes of the Marine Exchange and Arctic Watch. Thank you.
Ahoy and good morning, everybody. And John, what a great opening you had there, just to kind of set the scene. I know to get all that information, you probably had to read it, but that was there's a lot of powerful words there. The slide says Steve White and Byron Hayes, but we're also joined by Brian Hindenberger, who is our Chief Technical Officer, and he is an amazing technician, a doer, been out in the field, and brings a lot to the team, and he's a great collaborator also. So next slide. Thanks. I think a lot of people have heard this. I gave a presentation to IARPC when about 2 years ago, when Arctic Watch was just kind of really forming together and coming together, and there's been a lot of progress since then. I'll go through this background real quick. I know we got limited time. We want to get into the meat and potatoes here, but everyone knows traffic's continuing to increase. Next slide. And just like's going on with this group, there's a lot of focus on the Arctic, from everything from the highest levels of government to research organizations to NGOs. It's received not only intellectual attention, but a lot of money has been spent in the region. And I think if you think back to some of John's opening, concerns of the people who are living in the area with all this attention and trying to put national level attention down to these real concerns at the communities that live and have lived in this region. Trying to marry those together is not a small task, and there's been a lot of natural I guess friction, maybe a little bit, and a lot of it, I believe, in my opinion, is not being able to bridge that communications gap to understand everything from each level and how it's all working, because really everybody wants the same kinds of things up here. So next slide. We really have focused Arctic Watch from bridging that gap from the bottom up and engaging from the community level. And I shouldn't even say from the bottom up. When I say that, please understand I'm talking on a spectrum from national strategy all the way to communities. It could be, you could flip that, but whatever that is, we're trying to bridge from community level and matching all the great work that's being done and giving us space to kind of actually do something to address the concerns, and bring all the work that's being done together to address needs in the Arctic. Next slide. So I think everybody knows this, and I don't mean to be insulting, and just like John's opening statement, I think this is a great just to kind of ground everybody on what some of these local concerns are, and they're so real up in this region. I've operated up here. It's really one of the most unique regions in the world when it comes to operating on the water, and the concerns from all the different traffic that's operating up there, the environmental concerns, the concerns of the region. But this right here can't be forgotten. This isn't just a bullet point. This is real. The changes that are going on there, the real food security that people are struggling with, just the change in culture that's going on, and you look at the increased amount of traffic that's coming in this area, and then you put on some of those national level security concerns with foreign traffic, foreign vessels operating in the area, and really trying to protect that way of life with all this stuff going on is not an easy task, but it's something we can all do by working together. And I love that this, one of the themes of the IARPC is collaborations, because that's the only way that we can do this is by working together. So next slide. So this is kind of where we're focused. We're bringing in technology and working with partners to really address concerns and to give some communications with people who might not be involved in a collaborative group. They're just operators in the area, or people who are up in the area to try and make sure that all the science that's going on, people have quick access to it, that any of the regulations, whether they be from the IMO level or to the local level, that people are aware of all the concerns, and to really facilitate safe, environmentally responsible and secure when you get into national security operations in the Arctic. And kind of our part of the collaboration, we're doing a lot of equipment build out and providing capabilities to help share this information between vessels and all the way to the community level up to the government agency level. Next slide. This slide's almost outdated. There's so many partners that have been involved in Arctic Watch, and anybody who's not listed, I really apologize. But please look at this as hey, there's a lot of people that have come to the table really to make this effort work, and this is just a smattering of it. There's some government agencies on there. There's local community representation, and we haven't really built this out fully to really show this. That's probably a weak point on there. But one thing we did throw on there, and I think a great partner on there is IARPC, just on there. But next slide. So again, quick background, we maintain marine safety sites throughout the state of Alaska at the Marine Exchange. Brian has been involved, who's sitting to my right, with this effort, everything from being out in the field to working with all the different technologies to store data and make all these systems work, and really the goal of trying to make it available for again, safe, efficient, environmentally responsible operations in the Arctic. And then this is important. The term that they use in the military, where Byron, there's Byron to my left and Brian to my right. Byron and I come with the Coast Guard. The term MDA, Maritime Domain Awareness, was used heavily in the military, and it's kind of really shifted to the civilian and industry, understanding that knowing what's going on is on the water is important for any number of reasons, everything from environmental concerns to security. But then there's another piece of maritime domain management that is that you build upon, and we need the equipment, and we need the sensors, and we need the data, and bringing in everybody's information to really do those things. So marine safety sites, as we build those out, and I think this week we got a couple, this week or next, we got a couple VHF radio platforms that are going up in the Arctic, which is a huge just improvement to share information with vessels on the water, along with anybody on shore who's in VHF range and can talk back and forth. So next slide. And then another part that was kind of on the terrestrial, the land side. This has just started 2 years ago, where we have these mobile marine safety sites. When you talk about a remote, vast area like we're talking about with not a lot of resources, this is really a force multiplier to help out. And there's several vessels, and they're not all operating in the Arctic, but really starting off with some of the state of Alaska working on this with some of the first vessels we did this with. The Columbia will be done here soon, but this is exactly what it is. It's a mobile platform that can gather data, provide communications. That data ranges from what vessels it can pick up to weather on scene, and then eventually ability to communicate some of that. Next slide. This is just a quick snapshot of August of all those vessels, and you can just see that they're the area, and some of this where we don't have any sensors, where again it's another just thing that builds more capability out on the water. Next slide. We were asked to kind of talk about this a little bit. This project's kind of near and dear to some of us here at Marine Exchange. I've dealt with this icing issue in the Bering Sea. It's a real thing that happens, and when you're captain on a ship and you're responsible for 200 people on board, this is one of the things that was one of the scariest things that we operated on. Switching to coordinating search and rescue operations. On my watch, we lost a destination. John Hollingsworth, who's our chief operating officer, was in charge of search and rescue during the Scandia Rose. And freezing spray is not a new phenomena, but it is hard to predict, and it is something that kills people, affects the environment when you got a ship sinking. And it's been very hard to predict when it's going to happen. And then maybe more importantly, if you do get conditions, and it's very dependent on what course you're going, where you're at, what your ship is, how your ship's designed, communicating that these conditions are could possibly be happening to other vessels so they can avoid it. So this group right here has been looking at that, and it's a great example, kind of what John was talking about at the beginning, where you get the Indigenous Sentinel Network, and you get people with technology, and you have some scientists on board that are looking at a lot of these observations to really try and tackle this real problem up there. And it's not something that happens every day, so it's not I'd like to say hurricanes don't happen every day, but it seems like they do now. But with the changing weather and that's going on up in the Arctic, freezing spray is important. You can just see some of the partners on there. Next slide. This isn't about the freezing spray project, but I just want to share a little. Kind of one of the pieces we're doing is over on the left on the vessel side, mobile marine safety site. We're testing out a technology to get real-time observations. This is new. And then the next part that we're going to kind of be working on is, again, getting word out to other vessels in the area. But that's just our part. There's the Indigenous Sentinel Network that's out there, and they're taking real-time observations and providing that. So other data is coming in from other sources, either from kind of that local knowledge, and kind of tapping into that that experience of some of the people who've operated up there for a long time, and kind of gathering and merging together technology, local observations, along with scientists to start tackling this. So that's all I got on that. We can answer more questions later on this, but I personally, like I said, I'm excited about this project because I think it's gonna save some lives out there. Next slide. So this is kind of that was kind of Brian's side of the house, what we were talking about at the beginning, and now we're shifting to what Byron does with our 24/7 operations center, something called sea traffic management, and that's where we are actually trying to affect the behavior of vessels out there and make sure vessels have all the information, all this, anything that's going to help, again, protect that environment, protect the way of life, make things safer up there. When you get to where you have a ship that's in trouble and maybe experience loss of life and environmental damage, we've really lost. In addition to search and rescue, we've also been responsible for oil spill cleanup. And a good oil spill, you're cleaning up like a perfect oil spill, like textbook, you're probably cleaning up 20% of the oil that gets spilled. More likely in a good response, you're around 10%. So we don't want to get to where we're okay, we're going to clean up 10% of the oil that's doing all this damage or fuel or whatever it is, but really try and get in that air chain early on to prevent that from happening. That's keeping ships in the right spot, making sure they have the right environmental data, making sure even something as simple as, hey, you shouldn't be here because you're risking your ship. You shouldn't be in an area because you're providing risk to marine mammals that are in an area, and using all the science in that realm to help, kind of that human interaction with the environment that's going on up there, and displaying ways, whether it be aids to navigation or current weather, to again reduce risk, make things safer, and address some of the very real concerns that are going up on there, and gather that data for science also. Next slide. Quick summary of how this works. You got any kind of organization that might want to share information or gather information, and that's what's kind of in blue, just trying to express that. In green is types of information that we might be talking about. And this really runs the gamut from gathering science to managing the different users that are on the waterway, everything from commercial industry to subsistence users on the water, and then having the capabilities and the equipment to communicate and gather that information and getting that to the end users, and also gathering back from end users information that can feed back. So it's really, this looks linear. It's really a circular type process. Next slide. So this is just something that just kind of with NOAA that came out, kind of probably should have. It's an MOU where after Merbach especially, there was a lot that, hey, we need to find a better way to transmit information, whether that's these storms that have been harder to predict and they come up, and letting people know, or we met with tsunami folks. There's a lot of early warnings that we can provide not only to communities, but there might be vessels out there that can gather information that helps for a tsunami or a major weather event like Merbach, that could be indicators that really get us in front of that. I don't want to say response, but preparation, knowing what's going on. So again, this is just one example of sharing information, and something we're really excited about working with the National Weather Service on. Next slide. This is a couple quick examples of just to kind of, so people can wrap their brains around, other examples of doing this stuff. This is a vessel that's heading into an IMO area to be avoided. The vessel was obviously on track, going to cut through this area. You can see that the watch center noticed this. They contacted them. And you can see that the vessel adjusted course and went through one of the authorized passes out the Aleutian chains, this picture is. But it's just one example. This stuff happens on a daily basis in the operations center. Next slide. And this is kind of a best practice. We have been reached out to by worldwide and within the United States about what we're doing with just deconflicting different kinds of users on the waterways. It could be vessels that are lightering, and they used to lighter everywhere, where they're, especially in the Arctic communities, to get all their fuel from the sea to support their villages, their cities. But this was just kind of done in a it was kind of Wild West. If I were to say, hey, we've got fuel and we're delivering it, and we'll meet you. We'll meet the barge here, and that might have been going on right in an area that's very important to subsistence fishing. It might be being done at a time where there's subsistence gathering going on, or it's affecting maybe seabirds that are eider ducks that are taking care of their babies, and so there we came up with a voluntary, totally voluntary, working with industry, working with oil spill response organizations, working with pilots to say, hey, these are the areas where we will lighter. These are the conditions we'll lighter in. If those conditions, weather conditions, aren't met, we have secondary sites, but we really reduce the risk. I think there's, what's the number now of how many authorized areas? Is it like 17 areas now only, instead of just happening anywhere at any time? And that's just one example on deconflicting this kind of use. I praise what the research vessels have been doing, that started with when there was a Arctic Waterway Safety Committee of conflict avoidance to try and make sure they're not operating where there's subsistence activity. And I really think that practice in particular is something that needs to be spread to other users, and is something that should be proud. I think because the research vessels have been so proactive and engaging, they've also kind of almost been identified in some regards as, oh, look, pointed out that it's not working smoothly, if you will, but they're the only ones doing anything to really address any of this. And so while there has been a learning curve on how to best incorporate this, I think it's a best practice. It needs to go to other operators. If you think of that first spaghetti chart slide, and you look at tugs and tows and tankers and other vessels that are operating in the area, there's a lot of people that best practice should and can be shared with for conflict avoidance. Next slide. Couple tenets that we're working on, though, getting a harbor safety committee going. This happens in a lot of places, not just in Alaska, but around the United States, where you have a committee of users and people who are interested in the kinds of things we're talking about, making sure things are safer and that. There was one up in the Arctic for a little while. It was really funded through Shell when they were up in the area, and it kind of fizzled out, but that left a gap. And this is an important way to share that information amongst kind of along that continuum I was talking later. So getting this running again, stood up a committee to address these concerns, and then come up with guidance, a user's guide, a safety plan that kind of gathers all that information where somebody can use. One of the things that's a little bit different about Arctic Watch is, instead of just having a user's guide that everybody's responsible for have it on the bridge of their ship or download it on their computer or something, and then trying to shift through all the information. Our watch will have this information, be able to see the vessels that are out there, and then if they're not doing something, either because they don't know or they forgot or something's going on, identifying an anomaly in there and say, hey, here's the best practices, here's the user guide, here's the best behavior for protecting what's going on out on this region. Next slide. And this really is the new kind of user's guide. It's going to be web-based also. So none of those other organizations or users guides are interactive the way that we're building out Arctic Watch to be, where you can actually come to one stop and get this information. And this is a not a finished product, and it never will be a finished product. This is something that will continue to grow and blossom and get bigger, where as more information and more users are brought to this, but another place for that collaboration of kind of that information continuum. And Allison or Allie, do you want to pull that up, that website real quick? And we'll just look at this just briefly to give you some ideas. And you go back to, there was a slide there about local concerns, wanting to help manage traffic, have some input and understand what's going on. If this is what the website that's been built out is going to do some of that. So thanks. So on the live Arctic traffic viewer, that is just it's going to give, and obviously there's not as much going on now as in the Arctic, but these are live shots that we're actually feeding of what traffic is up there, and this just kind of will pan around. If we were to leave this here, it would zoom in on different regions and look at different areas, and it would show the traffic, any AIS traffic that's up there. And it's some place where somebody can go and just kind of see what's going on, what kind of traffic is up there. Again, everybody's aware, everybody has the same information, and they can see what's going on. This requires a lot of equipment to track this, both terrestrial AIS and satellite AIS, to see what vessels are operating up there. So next slide, or Nick, go back to the main page if you would. Daily vessel updates. So the watch here is providing a daily snapshot also. They're feeding this page daily, and this is a static shot just to say, hey, today here's a picture of what's going on in the Arctic. But on that educating and everybody understanding that maritime domain awareness, so you can get to management, they pick a different vessel every day, and they have a daily kind of, hey, here's a boat, here's the kind of traffic that's operating up there, and they're highlighting that, and they're kind of saying what's going on with that. And this just stood up in late June. And you can go into the archives and you can see this snapshot for every day, and you can see whatever vessel's been highlighted on there. And if we go, yeah, that's just kind of, we don't have to open those, but you can go and you can look at the vessel of interest for that day, or you can see the static picture that was provided. And then if we go back out, this one here, and even since we met last time, that ice edge is different. That's something that Brian helped work in loading that. We have a little glitch up there. There's not a giant up on the upper left, a little pie shape where there is no ice. That's some kind of glitch we're working on. We just loaded this last week on there. But this is an example. That's the ice edge right now. And I know there's a million different ice, well, maybe not a million, but there's a lot of different ice reports and different things. But again, we're trying to get the right information that somebody could see that's helpful for making things safe up there. We've also loaded on there, I think, the buoys, the research buoy locations that were, and you can click on any of those and kind of get the information on that, whose mooring it is, what it's for. If somebody's wondering, because again, oh, there's all kinds of stuff being deployed and what is it? And we don't know. Trying to provide transparency on what's going up there in the region and why it's important. It's not all invasive. It's all really done for trying to gather this information to make things safer and understand what's going on in this dynamic region. One of the things, the goals, if you could follow me on this, at some point, we're going to get where I think you can see all that together. You can see vessels where they are on the same screen, that you can see other data layers that you can pull into this, and you can pull and turn off different data layers on there. This is going to be a huge improvement. This really will be something that I think is a best practice for the world, not just the United States, as you look at collaborating and having a real tool to help manage some of these concerns and provide visibility for everybody. We've worked with international partners. Norway's got something that's called Barrett Watch, and you could go and look at that page, and for their country, they have something that's very similar. That's wholly run by the government, and it's got a lot of different stuff on there. And we really try and bring in best practices, best technology to try and address these concerns. Next slide. Or yeah, we can pop off the web page for now. I will say, we also, for information sharing, we started a Facebook page, and where we can hang information. Hey, there's some Chinese vessels that military vessels that are operating in the region right now. People can go and just see that, where it's kind of real time. And this was brought up through the communities. They said, hey, Facebook, a lot of people get on and look at Facebook, and you really need to have a Facebook platform to share information, even if it points back to something else. But Facebook is kind of the entering place for a lot of the communities where they look to go get information. So that is a place where we can hang all kinds of stuff. I think we're getting ready to hang when we get these sites built up with the new comms in the area. It's great you build new comms, but if nobody knows about it, it's, not as effective as it could be. So we'll hang up, hey, there's now VHF radio communications in the region. Anything else on that?
Yeah.
Nope. And this is the big one. We can talk through some of those terrestrial sites and some of those marine mobile sites to vessels, but that's just one of the tools. Big time, and something we use in other regions is email and satellite phone. You kind of want the full mix of anything you can use to reach to a boat. To get that kind of information, enrollment is important. And enrollment A says, hey, I'm a vessel that operates in this area. I would like to get this information that's available. I appreciate that somebody else is looking who might clue me into something. An environmental risk might be something to do with marine mammals, might have to be a weather event. And that this is just going to be enrolling, and we're getting the research vessels, I think, are to enroll in that. And with that, Nick, I'm just going to roll through real quick that this will be kind of the template to start doing that. The goal with this template, and we're going to wrap up here, is to get this information where we can display that again on the website, and then we got the vessels so we can share information with them. All right, next slide. I think, yep, that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much. No, it's great. I feel like every time we hear from you all, we learn something new, and there's so many opportunities for collaboration. I think everyone here today probably maybe was familiar with Marine Exchange or Arctic Watch, slightly familiar with the kind of activities you all are involved in, but I'm sure everyone has learned something new about, the impacts that you all are having and how other opportunities for collaboration. So thank you all so much for being here and for sharing with us. I think given that your contact information is here, if folks have questions for Arctic Watch, I would say let's hold them to the end, or please do reach out to them directly. And we're going to go ahead and move into the second part of our agenda. So to preface that, I kind of want to set the scene here by just refreshing people's minds on what field operations community of practice is kind of responsible for under the current implementation plan. In general, FOCP's goals are to enhance research coordination and also to improve transparency and communication between the Arctic research community and between local and Indigenous communities. So there are a couple of ways that we do this, and I think a lot of folks on this call are probably familiar and involved with these, so I won't spend too much time. But a few of them, right, we hold annual pre and post field season meetings. We'll come back to the post field season meeting here in a little bit. And then each year we lead the Research Vessel Matrix, which is a compilation of planned research expeditions with critical details, including dates, ports, planned cruise tracks, and sampling activities. And we post these on the website, on IARPC's website, and we also send out any updates and changes to these activities through a newsletter to keep communities and researchers apprised of these changes. And importantly, this provides a communication pathway should anybody need to contact people involved with these research operations. As Captain Steve touched on, FOCP also compiles a list of deployed mooring assets in Arctic and Alaska waters. So this is kind of like our first collaboration with Arctic Watch. We're pretty good, we think, at communicating our activities amongst ourselves within our research community and the groups that IARPC extends to. But Arctic Watch represents, kind of an opportunity to extend this information to groups that we haven't had more direct contact with. Again, all in the interest of improving communication and safety in these activities. So to introduce our most recent collaboration with Arctic Watch, I'm going to pass it over to co-leads David Allen and Katie Smith to introduce this daily cruise report template.
Hi, and thanks, Ali. Thanks also, Kevin, Steve, and Byron and Brian for the presentation on Arctic Watch. I think I could probably talk about that all day with you. So Ali mentioned this new collaboration, and you'll look on the left-hand side of your screen. You'll see the template bins of information that we're looking for. So identifying the research vessel as well as the date, then the period covered for the report. Understanding that when a daily report goes out depends on when folks are available for non-operational time. Usually that's after dinner in most cases. But anyway, then the starting and ending position, a narrative of operational activities, any notable wildlife observations, as well as the current weather description, and then a brief discussion of the upcoming operations, and then some information that largely can remain untouched for most of a cruise: the date departed home port, scheduled return to home port, next port of call, and location, and then most importantly, the bridge contact as well as the lead scientist contact for the vessel. And so we have been. So this is an opportunity really to. I think Captain Steve pointed this out really well in his presentation. This is an opportunity for us to take advantage of a new technology and or platform, and really build on the amazing reputation of the scientific community, the leadership of the scientific community on being transparent and being communicative about activities in order to deconflict them. And so we see this as a really exciting opportunity. And what we hope to gain by doing this is all on the right-hand side of the screen. Consistent, standardized information that is readable and usable. Hopefully, that will also mean that it's much easier for folks to actually develop these reports, because these bins are now standardized and simplified. An expanded distribution network as represented by Arctic Watch, by this platform, as well as the associated activities on Facebook and beyond. And then it provides those important deconfliction points both at the bridge and the chief scientist, who's the point of contact for any given research operation. And then finally, something that we've never really accomplished is the sharing and archiving of data. So we'll now have a record. Previously, when you were on someone's daily report email list, or you weren't, and if you didn't receive that message or didn't get it forwarded to you, you never see it again, and you never know that it happened. With this collaboration with Arctic Watch, we have an opportunity to also maintain an archive of those daily reports, and some of those examples of types of data that might really be of interest are right here on the right hand side at the bottom of the slide. If we can move to the next slide, please. So that was the why, and now we'll move on to the how. So we have been working on developing this template for a number of months now, and we've had a variety of different conversations. We've obviously leveraged access and used a bunch of different daily reports, both for our cruises as well as beyond. And we've had multiple conversations with research coordinators, chief scientists, as well as with other community members. And I guess at this point, it'd probably be great for me to turn to John Orr, if you want to talk about some of the consultations or communications that you've had associated with this as well. John?
Yeah, thank you, David. Yeah, so this group did an excellent job in anticipating all the information that I think is going to be important for the community members that I reached out to, particularly the points of contact on this template. But you know, as it's clear, one of the biggest sort of beneficiaries of this template will be those communities and the tribal folks that live on the coast. So we decided it was important to reach out to folks that represented those people. I reached out to tribal marine advocates and research coordinators who are tasked with engaging with folks, like IARPC, and asked for their feedback on this template. We did get a few points of input, specifically regarding clarifying timeliness of these reports and expectations for the reports themselves. But for the most part, people were content with the information on there and felt that the information that was going to be provided to Arctic Watch was sufficient for their needs. So of course, as always, we remain open to any further input down the line. So please feel free to contact us if you need to. Thank you, Dave.
Awesome. Thank you, John. So we've really tried to do our due diligence on this, and this, if you notice on the bottom right of the screen, this is at least part of this process. We've had an ongoing public comment period that's been hosted on the IARPC collaborations page. Today we're having our first public engagement on this template. But we really, as John said, we really want to, number one, to make sure that this is a useful and constructive entry into this space, and that it hopefully makes the process easier, not more difficult, with all of the benefits that we talked about on the previous slide. And now I think I will turn it over to Arctic Watch to talk about the actual process. Or is it Katie and Arctic Watch?
Arctic Watch can go ahead if they want to share a little bit on the workflow.
Yes, this is Byron. So the workflow would just be, we received this report with the end goal of being the Arctic Watch slide that when you went to the Arctic Watch website that was seen. you could basically hover over the vessel and see this summary, just to make it completely transparent for everyone. And Brian here mentioned, just listening to your discussion, he would also be able to house it on the Arctic Watch website as far as standardization. So this could be a template that's emailed in daily, or you could go to the website and we can build it in where it could just be filled in and submitted.
I think one other thing to mention is, you know, you can imagine anybody who's got a concern and now a vessel's being contacted. There's another intermediate in there where the 24/7 watch station who's kind of got knowledge of what's going on or why vessels as they develop this. They're also another resource for communities to reach out to and say, hey, what are these vessels doing up here? What are these? Oh, those are research vessels. Oh, that's a tanker. They're delivering fuel to Shishmaref. That's they're not in the research vessel. That's why when you see that there's a boat there and you don't see one of these reports yet because they aren't doing this good stewardship that everybody else is doing. That's why you don't see that, but a hub where you could kind of decode what's going on up there too.
And any questions that anyone had would, as Captain White said, would be directed to the watch who would be able to answer, point in the right direction, or get that information. And also, just as it says on the spreadsheet, all the information would be archived.
And again, I think there's some bad press that goes on because they're like, oh, these vessels aren't doing what they're supposed to. We could help get some of the vessels aren't doing what they're supposed to, might not be research vessels, and they're getting lumped in with what's going on with the good stewardship and say, well, they aren't participating yet, or we're still working on them. That this is a small cruise ship, not somebody who's involved in helping kind of understand and educate on what's going on with the traffic up there, and then say, yeah, we really hope that they follow the best practices and start doing what's going on here, because this is really the gold standard in transparency and communication in this region.
Hi everyone. So originally we were hoping for maybe a little more time to discuss this openly as a group. We were coming up on the top of the hour, but if anybody has some initial comments or feedbacks regarding the template, we'd love if you could speak up now or put it in the chat. And then I'm also going to drop our field operations email address. Please feel free to email any comments, feedback, or questions to our field ops email, or also if you have our personal emails, feel free to message us that way. We're really looking for as much community buy-in and input as possible. So we really welcome anything. So if anybody has anything to say at this moment, please feel free to raise your hand or put something in the chat. Candace.
Hey, hey Steve, it's great to see you again. It's been a little while. Just want to say a huge thank you to Marine Exchange of Alaska for what you guys have been doing through your Arctic Watch initiative and the engagement with the communities. I know we've talked, and you mentioned the letter that got sent to the Coast Guard last summer. And so, you know, this is really something that the Coast Guard finds incredibly helpful and incredibly useful, and really appreciate the collaboration with the IARPC group to enhance how this information can be disseminated and made useful to the communities, because at Coast Guard, you know, this is something that we hear all the time about getting a better handle on understanding what vessels are coming through, when they're coming through. So just wanted to really just give a shout out and say thank you so much for all your efforts on behalf of Coast Guard.
Thanks, Candace. And I should mention to this group that one of the big concerns is a lot of this foreign traffic that's increasing, especially with world events going on. We've already seen a shift to more vessels using the moving goods and services, especially on not necessarily US, but on the Russian side. And when this really worked at the Wilson Center and other folks, once as we get to a place where we're collaborating better with our partners on the other side of the Bering Straits, and we have this process in there, it's going to be an easy plug-in to kind of start looking at best practices, not just on our side, but working with the international community. And thank you, Candace, for all the work the Coast Guard does in those forums on the international side to say, hey, really best practices worldwide being used. And this will be a great example to kind of build on.
Well, thank you for that. As we're on the top of the hour, just wanted to talk about some of the upcoming events that the FOCP group has coming up. You can visit the IARPC events page to see upcoming meetings. We are working on scheduling our post-field season meeting for the week of January 20th, so please feel free to keep checking back. That should go up soon. FOCP will also have representation and do a presentation at the Marine Planning Night at AMSS 2025 in Anchorage, late January. So yeah, just thank you so much for your time and participation. Feel free to email us. Really looking forward to discussing more with the community at large. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Yep, thanks so much, everyone. Thanks, Arctic Watch and the FOCP team for all of their work on this.
Thanks, everyone.